He's the great Bob Costas, NBC, MLB Network, and snowboarding aficionado. And Bob joins us now. Hi, Bob.
Hi, Dan.
How are you?
I'm good.
What bothered you yesterday about the voting process?
Oh, I don't know if it's a question of being bothered. There are so many vexing questions and legitimate positions. It's a legitimate position not to vote for someone who you strongly either suspect or the overwhelming evidence indicates that they were on PEDs. But to me, as I've said many times, it's also a legitimate position to create a distinction among those players. To say, no, I'm not going to vote for Sammy Sosa because I don't even know if Sammy Sosa would have been an all-star without steroids, and certainly not a Hall of Famer. But we know that Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds would have been first-level Hall of Famers without PEDs. So is it legitimate to vote for them, as I would at some point if I were a writer and had a vote? Is it legitimate to vote for them but leave other steroid guys out? I think it is, but I respect the argument to the contrary. That's what makes all of this so interesting. When people say the writers only thought that 3 guys were legitimate, that's actually not 100% true. Only 3 guys were legitimate in the minds of 75% of the electorate. There were 8 or 9 guys who got 50% or somewhere in that vicinity. So you got all these ongoing arguments, and there are valid positions on many sides of those arguments.
Do we need to change the process?
Well, they are going to run into a backlog of the next few years because of the PED guys who otherwise would have gotten in, and many writers withholding the vote. And then you look at next year, and you've got Smoltz, Randy Johnson, and Pedro Martinez coming onto the ballot. Nomar Garciaparra and Gary Sheffield as well, but based on recent results, I'm not so sure that they'd make it, but certainly the 3 pitchers are going to make it. In 2016, Ken Griffey Jr. winds up on the ballot. You are going to get, at least for the next few years, because of the circumstances of the steroid era and a few other factors, you're going to get a backlog. And there's going to be at least a short-term call for expanding the ballot beyond 10, or at the very least saying that you don't automatically fall off the ballot if you don't get 5% of the vote, because in some years there's just not going to be a place on the ballot for guys who some writers would otherwise vote for. So I think there might be a little bit of tinkering.
Your reaction to Dan Le Batard giving his vote to Deadspin?
He can do it if he wants to, and I understand what his motivation is. His motivation is to expose what he believes are the flaws in the system and the flaws in the thought process of a lot of people who vote. I'm not sure, though, that everybody who doesn't vote for someone who they connect with PEDs is necessarily a hand-wringer or some sort of sanctimonious prig. I think there are good reasons in some cases to keep guys out. And as I've said many times, the reasons are less moralistic than they are questions of authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
I have a legitimate question about the authenticity of Sammy Sosa's baseball achievements. I have no question. I'm not putting Barry Bonds on a higher ethical or moral level than Sammy Sosa, but I do put Barry Bonds in a different baseball category than Sammy Sosa. So I think many of us, and when I say us, I'm not a writer, and neither are you, so we don't have a vote, but many of those involved in the conversation actually have more nuanced views than that. It isn't just, a bunch of Puritans standing in the doorway of Cooperstown and wagging a finger, and anyone who ever stepped out of line, even for 1 minute, is not getting in. I think there are many, many voters of good conscience who think about this very carefully and who make thoughtful, nuanced distinctions as they fill out their ballots.
He's Bob Costas from NBC joining us, Dan Patrick Show. This is what I've said all along. You have too many voters. You have 600 writers, and a lot of these guys don't even cover the sport. Mm-hmm. Why does Dan Le Batard have a vote in the first place? He's strong opinion and a sports guy, obviously, and I know he writes for the Miami Herald, but how many games does he go to and some of these other guys? If you start there and say, process has too many voters, and how many guys, what's the criteria for being a voter for the Baseball Hall of Fame? Why can't we do what pro football does, narrow this down, and have a discussion in a room, and you don't emerge until you have a consensus on the number of guys going into the Baseball Hall of Fame. You could televise this. You lobby. You get but I think if we're going to add this much importance,
that'd make Around the Horn look like patty cake, wouldn't it?
but how great would that be? You host this Major League Baseball Network, bring the writers in, or I think it should be writers, contributors, broadcasters, former players. Make it a group of people, 45. Get in there, maybe have 30, and you discuss the candidates. You lobby for your candidates. You either vote yes or no, because then you'll wipe out the idiots who go, Armando Benitez, I'm going to vote for him. Jock Jones, J.T. Snow. I mean, that's where you sort of make a mockery of this thing. So compress it, discuss it, televise it, and 3-hour process, let the white smoke come out of the chimney, and you got your candidates.
Tyler Kepner of the New York Times made a good point this week. He said they need to shrink the number of voters, but expand the pool of voters. And by that he meant that, close to 500 is way too many for the very reasons you cite. A lot of these guys no longer actively cover baseball. They don't take it as seriously as some others do. But you could expand the pool to include bloggers, not random bloggers, but guys who've shown themselves to be serious and to be devoted to the game and to be knowledgeable. You can include more people from the sabermetrics community. You could possibly, as they are in some committees but not in the overall voting, you could possibly include some former players, but again, you'd have to vet them and make sure that they took it seriously. Some people think broadcasters who see a lot of baseball should be involved, and you might get a more representative and knowledgeable and serious electorate if you had fewer total voters, but if those voters were selected from a wider swath of the baseball community.
Yes, but I have no problem. I don't know why you don't have a vote, Bob. I mean, that to me seems silly. That you've watched as much baseball as anybody. You call the games. You're around the game. We don't celebrate the game of baseball when it comes to the Hall of Fame. That's my problem. We talk about all the negatives. We celebrate every other Hall of Fame, but we don't celebrate baseball. And I think you have these writers, and there's too many. And I think if you have a cross-section, if you want to have a small committee of former players who are involved in it, and you have broadcasters, you have people who love and appreciate and know the game. Sabermetrics has certainly made its way into the game. I'm fine with all of that. Open our eyes to understand the bigger picture, not this, I will not vote for this guy because of this. I don't want tunnel vision. You want to have an opinion. You don't want to vote for somebody who used PEDs. Fine, that's your prerogative with your ballot. But I think that I'm not blaming the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I'm blaming the baseball writers of America who have created this divide here, and that's my biggest issue with all of this.
Well, two things. I still think, with all respect to football, basketball, and hockey, I still think that for American sports fans, the Baseball Hall of Fame is the one that resonates the most. It's the one that generates the most debate. And the reason we hear more negatives in current years or recent years about baseball is because the steroid issue affects that more than other sports because you have more statistics and you have generational comparisons. So that's going to go on for a while. But the other point I'd like to make is this. It seems to me that for a lot of people, when it comes to steroids, it's all or nothing.
Yeah. Yep.
It's all or nothing. Guys commit serious crimes in society, and eventually they get paroled. And so I don't understand if someone says, I think after all this time and after all this punishment and all this humiliation and all this damage to his life, that you could put Pete Rose on the Hall of Fame ballot but still have him banned from having a job in baseball?
Yes.
How does that indicate that somehow you're saying that gambling on baseball is not a serious offense? How would it indicate if 10 years from now Barry Bonds got into the Hall of Fame, would anyone infer from that, baseball's a little weak on steroids? They kind of wink at cheaters. Aren't there any gradations here?
I've said the same thing. Let people vote on Pete Rose. Don't let him hold a job in baseball. But I can't take away what he did as a player. And, when it comes to Bonds, or Rafael Palmeiro's not on the ballot anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He got caught at the end of his career. I don't know how long he did it.
Right.
I don't know all of these things. And that's the problem here. Mike Piazza did not get in. The greatest hitting catcher of all time. Like he didn't get close. So I'm trying to understand judge and jury. I'm not envious of these guys voting, but I think we have to lessen the burden on them of what to factor in here, because this is CSI MLB, and it's really
You're right.
really difficult here.
Yeah, and some kind of proportion, some kind of sense of proportion, some kind of, I don't know if leniency is the right word, but some sort of reality here and proportion and common sense should not be interpreted as not caring about these offenses. It's a serious offense to have cheated the game, cheated your fellow competitors, cheated the rule book by using PEDs. It's a serious offense to gamble on baseball, even if you don't gamble against your own team. But there are other serious offenses for which ultimately there is some leniency or second chance after a lengthy and significant penalty has been served. And I don't think that the foundations of the Hall of Fame or the foundations of the game of baseball would be shaken to their core if we made that distinction.
Yes, because it's about the history of the game, understanding the history, what Pete Rose did, what he meant to the game, what he got punished for is part of the game. It's a museum. So I'm with you on that. Before we go, you found out how rabid that snowboarding community can be.
Yeah, and you know what I also found out, and this is also true. Look, you and I have been at this a long time.
Yeah.
What I said to Matt Lauer on the Today Show, and he laughed. It wasn't one of those forced television laughs. He laughed spontaneously because it was funny, and it was good-natured. And I was half poking fun at myself by saying, look, the world of the Olympics, and especially of the Winter Olympics, keeps evolving to the point where a guy like me has to learn what these new sports are. They keep inventing them. So the joke was half at my own expense. This is the kind of thing that I have been saying on the air in one way or another, including about sports that I love, like baseball, for 30 years. But now, in the new world, if that ticks off 500 people, which is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of those watching, they all have a megaphone. They all can go on social media. And the reaction can seem like a torrent when it's actually just a tiny trickle. And this is what you have to live with.
But
so you have
said
to decide,
jackass.
am I going to be bland forever? Never express an opinion. Never crack a joke. Never do anything that gets out of the most narrow and boring lane for fear that somebody's going to pitch a fit on the Internet. That's the real lesson of this.
But you said jackass. That's what I think set him off. You could have said it in this way and had fun with it, but it wouldn't have gotten the reaction from Matt Lauer.
Is there not a program called Jackass, or was there not a program called Jackass?
But you're saying that they're sort of to be laughed at and with, and I think that's where the snowboarding community.
You know what?
Said.
Hey, you and I have had far worse things said about us, and we're still standing.
What?
We got over it. They'll get over it.
Thank you, Bob. Let's go snowboarding in Sochi.
Absolutely. That's item one as soon as I get there.
Either that or luge. Two-man luge, you and me.
Yeah, that's what the world wants to see.
Thank you, Bob.
All right, see you.
That's Bob Costas, NBC MLB.